Chinese lunar probe has successfully taken off from the far side of the moon.
4、3、2、1，点火。
The Chang'e 6 module landed on Saturday in a volcanic basin close to the moon's south pole and has collected samples of rock and soil. They're expected to be very different from rock formations on the near side of the moon.
To what extent has China's strength really developed? This is the biggest unsolved mystery that the entire Western world is desperate to figure out right now. It's not that their intelligence agencies are incompetent. China's explosive rise in the past year has simply been too sudden, too shocking, and too unimaginable. First, on June 2, 2024, Chang'e 6 brought back 1,953 lunar soil samples from the far side of the moon, marking a historic first for humankind. Previously, the US and the Soviet Union only collected samples from the near side. No one had ever dug on the far side. Peers always understand each other best, and the Americans certainly know what this feat says about China's technological capabilities. Looking at their own sluggish lunar program, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson couldn't sit still anymore. He stopped mentioning the Wolf Amendment, which restricts cooperation with China, adopting the principle of, if you can't beat them, join them. He reached out directly to the China National Space Administration, asking, under the pretense that the moon belongs to all humanity, whether China would be willing to share some of the lunar soil. As the old saying goes, feign friendship before striking. Truly laughable. Next, on July 6, 2024, a fleet of China's Type 055 destroyers appeared in waters near Alaska. Historically, it was only the US that flexed its military muscle in the waters of other nations. Other than the former Soviet Union, no country had dared to send warships to America's doorstep. But China came openly, confidently, and left just as boldly, without the slightest sign of fear. Did the US respond? None. Because if the US had made any sudden moves, the Type 055 fleet was already fully prepared for real combat. Then on September 25, 2024, China suddenly launched a DF-31 missile, hitting a designated target 12,000 kilometers away in the Pacific with pinpoint accuracy. Western media focused more on the strategic implications. Is China preparing for full-scale confrontation? As for the technical capability, there's no doubt. It's already common knowledge that China's missile technology far surpasses the US. Then, on December 26, 2024, China unveiled two fully functional sixth-generation fighter jets, not concept models or PowerPoint slides, but actual prototypes. The U.S. Department of Defense convened an emergency meeting to discuss how to respond to the rapid advances of China's Air Force. It wasn't just about planes, it was about the balance of global military power shifting right before their eyes. This moment made many American strategists seriously feared that the U.S. could lose its long-held dominance in the skies. And now the American response is out. On March 26, 2025, Trump, smugly standing before the media, announced that Boeing would lead the development of the new F-47 sixth-gen fighter. Of all the companies, they picked Boeing, as if the U.S. government doesn't know that Boeing has already collapsed into dysfunction? Their biggest source of revenue is now stock speculation. Whistleblowers have mysteriously died, passenger jets keep malfunctioning around the world, and internal management is a mess. Can Boeing really shoulder the responsibility of developing a sixth-gen fighter? If they can produce even a concept image of the F-47 within 5 years, that would already be a great victory. While China is rising at an astonishing speed, Americans still love to talk tough. When Biden left office, he said, "When I became president, everyone was worried about when China would surpass the US. Now, no one talks about that anymore. What does that mean? It means my presidency was a great success, better than my predecessors." Trump was even more crazy. Barely 100 days into office, the White House website had nearly 100 banners proclaiming slogans like, "Under the great leadership of President Trump, America's winning every day." For someone who doesn't know better, it might sound like America is in some kind of golden age. These kinds of words can only fool voters who don't know anything. But America's real thinkers understand China's rise clearly. Former U.S. Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers spoke at the Davos Forum, offering a representative perspective. He said, We've been used to measuring national strength by GDP in US dollars, but we've overlooked China's real industrial capabilities, like building a semiconductor plant in 1 month or overhauling an entire supply chain in 3. In the wake of the global supply chain crisis caused by the Russia-Ukraine war, China's car exports surged past 6 million units, crushing traditional car makers in Germany, Japan, and the US with both technology and production capacity. While Western economists are still debating whether China's GDP growth is real, Qingdao Port's automated gantry cranes are simultaneously loading and unloading 8 300,000-ton cargo ships, each crane's AI system accurate to the millimeter. Over 3 years of the Russia-Ukraine war have proven that GDP figures in dollars are meaningless in real conflict. What matters in the end is comprehensive industrial and agricultural power. The combined GDP of the US, Europe, Japan, and South Korea is sky high. Yet even with their full support for Ukraine, they still couldn't do anything about Russia. China's strength is more than 10 times that of Russia, and its industrial output accounts for 30% of the world's total, more than that of the US, Japan, and Germany combined. Amid all the noise and confusion, the Western media has a very conflicted attitude toward China. On one hand, they still cling to the outdated belief that the West is strong and China is weak. Thinking China couldn't possibly rise this fast, its GDP must be fake, its rise is just talk. On the other hand, they're constantly slapped in the face by China's actual technological progress. How is it possible? China's GDP is only 59% of America's, yet its tech is more advanced? Is China really hiding its true capabilities? Thus, the question of how powerful China truly is has become the biggest mystery the Western world wants to solve. Whether someone supports or doubts China's rise, both sides have large followings and they're constantly at each other's throats. This is the chaotic state of Western public discourse today. As for China, China has been playing the game of strategic deception for over 2,000 years. They know all the tricks. They let others keep guessing wildly. There's no need for them to respond. They simply stay quietly focused on their goals and keep moving forward, step by step. So why did the US launch the trade war? Because it realized China wasn't just rising, it was redefining the game. Tariffs, bans, blacklists, these weren't signs of strength, they were signs of fear. Fear that the global order was shifting. Fear that the monopoly on innovation, influence, and power was slipping away. For decades, the US was comfortable outsourcing manufacturing to China, thinking it would remain cheap labor with no innovation. But what Washington didn't expect was how fast China would climb the value chain, from textiles to tech, from assembling iPhones to launching moon missions. By the time America realized it, Chinese companies like Huawei, BYD, and CATL were not just catching up, they were leading. So what did the US do? It pulled the emergency brake, slapped tariffs on hundreds of billions in Chinese goods, blacklisted tech giants like Huawei, banned advanced chip exports, and tried to force allies to decouple from China. But here's the twist. Instead of slowing China down, the pressure only accelerated its self-reliance. From chip manufacturing to green energy, China is now racing to build an ecosystem the US can't control. This trade war isn't just economic, it's strategic, ideological, and irreversible. So the real question now is not just whether China will surpass the US, but who will ultimately win the trade war and shape the future global order. If you're curious about the untold stories behind China's business and tech rise, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. The next global chapter is already being written, and you're watching it unfold in real time.